Today we're talking about extraverted thinking. We are going to explore this function based on the position in the cognitive stack and understand what this means. So tune in for that. We will talk about that in the next minutes. And before we do that, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's dive in. Okay, so first of all, we've got extraverted thinking as a hero function or a dominant function. This is the case of ENTJs and ESTJs, and this is basically the most important component of their personality. Extroverted thinking is all about efficiency. It's all about organizing things in the most efficient way possible. Some neuroscientific research suggests that it's possibly the case that ENTJs and ESTJs, due to their extroverted thinking, make use of the brain energy in the most efficient way possible. So they're all about efficiency on the inside and on the outside. Extroverted thinking is very good at delegating. It's very good at managing. So people who have this function as a hero function are really drawn to managing situations, being leaders, coordinators of teams, of groups, of projects, and so on and so forth. And they're very good at detaching the emotional side, focusing on the logical, objective things in order to make an objective decision and move things forward. Also, they really enjoy dealing with things in such a way that they can actually move forward and make things happen in a practical way. Okay, next we have extroverted thinking as a parent function, so auxiliary or second function in the cognitive stack. This is the case of INTJs and ISTJs, who similarly to ENTJs and ESTJs use extroverted thinking to focus on organizing, delegating, being structured in their approach, and having an objective decision-making process. However, they are a little bit more reserved and tend to think things through before acting a little bit more than an ENTJ or an ESTJ would do. Because of their introverted nature and because of the fact that extroverted thinking comes as a second function or a parent function, they tend to take a little bit more time before making some sort of decision like that. And this means that they don't overuse this function, so they might be healthier in employing it and making use of it. Okay, next we have extroverted thinking as a child function or a tertiary function. This is the case of ENFPs and ESFPs. And what is interesting about it is, similarly as we've discussed in the previous video about introverted thinking, is that the types that have this as a child function like to use it. They are curious about it, they're interested in exploring what it could mean, but they're better at using it in a more stress-free environment. So if they're pushed to make a decision, ENFPs and ESFPs won't jump into extroverted thinking, into the efficient, delegating, organized mode. They will prefer using introverted feeling. However, if they have a more relaxed environment, if they have more time to think about it, or if they're having fun, they can actually employ extroverted thinking and play around with what it can mean. So they can be good at delegating, they can be good at managing and organizing and being efficient in their approach. And they can actually be curious to explore this further, because extroverted thinking can actually help them bring their dreams into reality and getting better at making things happen rather than just thinking about something or exploring something on an emotional level. Extroverted thinking as an inferior function describes INFPs and ISFPs. What happens here is that they're not very comfortable at using this function, and they're not necessarily in tune with what extroverted thinking means, not naturally at least. So the way it will manifest in these types is as an urge, a very strong urge to organize something and make something efficient and objective as well. But usually they might get stuck in the grip of using this function, and this means that they will get quite obsessive about organizing things and not doing it in a very healthy way that is adapted to the context. At the same time, INFPs and ISFPs in the grip of TE can actually get quite critical of other people and can do it so in a way that is way too much, similarly to an unhealthy ENTJ or ESTJ. However, if they actually manage to use extroverted thinking in a way that is helpful and useful, they will actually be very proud of themselves, and it will give them a lot of happiness and fulfillment. Next, we've got extraverted thinking as a Nemesis function. Again, we're digging deeper into the unconscious, into the shadow functions. And this is basically the first function of the shadow in the situation of INTPs and ISTPs. So how does it look like in them? Well, the Nemesis function, as we've discussed in the couple previous videos, is a function that we can access in such a way that we make our hero function more complete. So when an INTP or an ISTP will think that introverted thinking doesn't do enough of a good job dealing with something, they will try to make use of extroverted thinking as well. And they might be relatively good at it, depending on the context or the situation, but at the same time they might be using it in a rather limited, narrow-minded way. Also, usually INTPs and ISTPs can become quite annoyed at TJ personalities that use extroverted thinking a lot, because they might feel that these people are actually opposing them, because this is basically the role of the Nemesis function. But this is not necessarily the case. It might be that an ENTJ will just share an opinion or try to help, but the INTP or the ISTP is likely to think that no, they're actually trying to be against me. They're trying to oppose me in a way or another. And this will annoy them because of their inner projections. Next, we have extroverted thinking as a critic function, so as a sixth function or second function from the shadow. This is the case of ENTPs and ESTPs, and the way it will manifest is that when their identity is threatened, for example, an ENTP or an ESTP will try to demonstrate to the other person why they are wrong, and they can become quite obsessive to prove others that they're wrong. They will try to investigate a lot, to find a lot of logical flaws in someone else's argument, and try to counterattack using this extroverted thinking. And they can become quite obsessive about proving other people wrong, embarking on a journey where their independent thoughts, so TI, is what makes sense, and other people's thoughts are not something they agree with. Extroverted thinking used in a rather unhealthy way. Next, we have extroverted thinking as a trickster or blind spot function, so the seventh function. As you remember, this is probably the trickiest function that anyone has to deal with, the trickster one. And when it comes to extroverted thinking, this is the case of INFJs and ISFJs. It's the part of them that they have the most difficulty accepting and integrated because they can't really see it. So when other people use extroverted thinking towards them, they might think that those other people are trying to control them, they're trying to dominate them, and they can become extremely against this. They can become very rebellious about it, and they will feel very, very much at unease. They will think that this function goes a lot against what matters most to them, and they will be very frustrated when other people try to impose something on them. This can cause them the most difficulties in life, and here I can really subscribe to that. And lastly, extroverted thinking as a demon function. This is the case of ENFJs and ESFJs, and this is basically something that completely opposes who they are because it is in opposition with their extroverted feeling. So ENFJs and ESFJs will have a lot of difficulty relating to people using extroverted thinking. They might be attracted to it because it's different and it complements them in one way or another, but they might really have difficulty integrating it, relating to it, and accepting it, because they will be like, why are you trying to be so forceful? Why are you trying to be so controlling? Why do you disregard people's feelings so much? Because it goes against what extroverted feeling as a hero tells them to do all the time. So in their case, similarly to INFJs and ISFJs, it will be very difficult to come to terms with what this part of their shadow actually means and what it actually looks like. And they will have a lot of difficulty accessing and manifesting extroverted thinking. However, guys, again, if we look back on what we discussed in the previous video, where we touched upon how TI and FI connect, maybe it's the case here as well. Maybe FE and TE are inherently dependable and they inherently connect with each other in such a way that they can kind of make the psyche spin. So maybe it's the case that extroverted thinking as a demon function in ENFJs and ESFJs, for example, is actually the gateway to a true integration of their extroverted feeling as well. Maybe it's through accepting the darkness of TE that they can make the light of FE come around and shine. So thank you guys, thank you a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next week with another video on cognitive functions explained.